GR Culver. We are live streaming on YouTube, and I will also be recording the meeting for our meeting summary purpose. So we can start now.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. We are starting the March 27th, 2024 PCAC meeting. So let me first call roll. We have Councilmember Salonia Miles. Is she here?
Present.
Okay, great. What about Board Member Karen Tonis? I know you are in for someone else tonight. Are you here? Okay. And welcome, Supervisor Walkinshaw. I know this is your first meeting, so thank you for being here. Supervisor Sylvia Glass. All right. Supervisor Margaret Angela Franklin.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Councilmember Sarah Bagley.
Here.
Yep, I know I saw you. Councilmember Justine Underhill.
Here.
Great. Councilmember John Steely.
Here.
Okay. Councilmember Ralph Smith.
Here.
Great. Vice Mayor Alana Menzing. Vice Mayor Clark Hedrick.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Carl sorry. Oh my gosh, this writing is little. I'm sorry. Carrie Nancy. All right. And Mayor Stanley Miles.
Yes.
Milan. Sorry, Milan. I'm sorry, Stanley. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Mayor Stanley Milan. Sorry about that. Okay,
Hear me?
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. So first thing is approving the summary notes of February 28th, 2024. If you all have had a chance to look at those, are there any changes to those summary notes?
No. Nope.
Okay, everybody who approves, say aye.
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 Okay, any nays? Okay, excellent. Those are passed then. And the first thing on the agenda then is the 6-year program update, FY 2024 to 2029.
Chair Gorbert and members of PCAC committee, this is Sri Nambudri, Senior Manager at NVTA. There are at least one new member I saw, so I will probably give a little bit more description than I was intending to do. I walked all you through the process, different performance measures we use, the quantitative measures, qualitative measures in the last meeting. And last meeting, I mentioned that we are filling in all these tables and we will present that back to you at this meeting, and we have all that things ready. But for the benefit of members who are either not present or are new to the committee, I may explain a little bit more as I go. I'll try to keep it within half an hour, so you have a time for other business activities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. A quick recall. There are 4 components, main components for the 6-year program project selection process. Starts with the eligibility, and the primary one is the project being included in transaction. So with that, I want to take a step back there. Transaction is NVTA's long-range transportation plan. As most of you should know, NVTA has 2 primary responsibilities. One is to prepare the long-range plan, multimodal transportation long-range plan for Northern Virginia. And number 2 is to prepare a funding plan and use the regional revenues to fund projects identified in that plan. The transaction, the long-range plan is updated every 5 years. Last update was adopted by the authority in December of 2022. The 6-year program is updated every 2 years. So this is the last one was updated in July of 2022. And it's almost a 1-year process. We started around last May when authority issued a call for projects. We received several applications by deadline, went through the eligibility process. That is the first step mentioned here to make sure we are walking that plan into the funding program, into implementation. So first check was to make sure the project applications are either a project that is already identified in transaction or a combination of multiple projects therein, or a subset of one project in identified. So that connection has to be made. Project location, it has to be in Northern Virginia. Governing body resolutions, when we receive an application from a jurisdiction or an agency, we want to see that governing body of that jurisdiction or agency has gone through the process of vetting that project and approving that the jurisdiction can apply for that project. Once we went through that review process, we sat with your staff to understand the project better, each of those applications better. When we review the applications, obviously we may have additional questions. We wanted to make sure that we model these projects, analyze these projects in computer model and other analysis accurately. So we wanted to make sure we understand the project really well. So your staff had an opportunity to explain the project orally in meetings with us too. Based on all that information, our consultant team and NVTA staff team started working on various analysis. Quantitative analysis, there are 3 components: congestion reduction related to cost. This is where you look at, it's a benefit cost ratio, and this is a legally required measure. By law, we had to give priority, authorities to give priority to that CRRC ratio when we look at funding recommendations. Second one is transaction rating. That includes, so CRRC, you can see as the title says, it's primarily the benefit we are looking at is congestion reduction. How much congestion reduction is achieved by the project. But another state law required us to look at more than congestion reduction. There were, I think, that's what is mentioned here as HB 599 in 2012. That required us to look at, I think, 7 different measures. At the staff level, we're sitting with all your staff and other agency staff. While we were working in updating the transaction, we looked at these 7 measures in the past and added more measures to make sure this is a much comprehensive analysis. Right now, in the latest update to the transaction, we have 10 measures. This includes congestion reduction on auto, congestion reduction in transit, and then accessibility for everyone, as well as especially looking at accessibility for equity population. We have safety, we have pedestrian and bike environment, improvement to that environment. We have emission reduction, and so on. So there are 10 measures right now. This committee, as well as the other statutory committee, technical advisory committee, went through a process of deciding how much weight each of these 10 measures should have. We came through that process in the past. As I mentioned in the last meeting, there was a question, are we doing that now again? No, we are not. That was part of the long range plan transaction update. We did it, and we are using that same measures and weights for this analysis. That's what, and it comes up with one weighted measure. That's what we call the transaction project rating. And then long-term benefit, again, we had a very detailed discussion at the last meeting. By law, we had to consider long-term benefit, which is loosely defined. But what it means is every jurisdiction that should get the share of benefit, transportation benefit they get from our investments, that share should be approximately equal to the share of revenues you all brought to the table. this also says in the long term. So many of those things are not clearly defined. Long term means what, approximately equals means what, transportation benefits means what. But transportation directors and senior staff in 2014 met together and came up with certain principles, and staff elaborated on, expanded on that principles to come up with some ideas how to do this. And we have been doing it for the last 3 rounds. We will present the results this time too. And then we also look at a series of qualitative considerations. This is where we are not doing any model-based analysis, but from the applications, we can see certain things from now so far we have funded 122 projects. And many of those projects are already completed or underway. So we have some understanding of how these projects have been performing over time. So we can look at some of these information through the applications or from data that we have. So past performance, do we have previous allocations? Are there funding gap? How much money is the project bringing from other sources? One thing, again, I want to stress is alignment with core values. As part of transaction update, authority adopted 3 core values: equity, safety, and sustainability. And we requested applicants to submit a statement showing how their project aligned with the 3 core values. And this time it was not mandatory. We are starting this first time, so we wanted to get an idea how this can be analyzed. So some people submitted that statement, some people didn't. So we looked at in their case, we looked at the applications to come up with some understanding. That's how we are looking at them. And finally, geographic and model balance, which we haven't looked at yet. It will come back when we start developing the recommendations. And finally, public comments. That's a 4th component of this selection process. As of today, we will be presenting all the materials we have. We already presented to the TAC. We are presenting it to you. Tomorrow, we will start the official public comment period. And I will come back to the dates later, but we will have a public hearing at the May authority meeting. Once we receive all that public comments, we build all that also into the rest of the analysis and come up with staff recommendations for you to consider. Next slide, please. I will not go through this. You have seen it the last meeting too. It's in your packet too. Summary of applications. We have 24 applications. This summary sheet gives all the details about funding requests. Does the project have previous NVTA funding? Are they bringing other committed funds? Total project cost. What are the phases for which funding is requested? What are the primary and secondary modes, and so on. Next slide, please. The summary by jurisdiction and by mode. So you can see 4 counties, 5 cities, and VRE. These are the applicants. A total of 24 applications requesting close to 1 billion. For the mode, you can see all modes are represented here. Roads, interchange, commuter rail, bus, bike ped, and technology. Next slide, please. A map that shows where these projects physically located. It's, as you can see, all over the region. Next one. This is on that first quantitative measure that I discussed, CRRC. So in this table, you will see those 24 candidate projects listed in the order of congestion reduction related to cost rating. Usually what we see in the past, our experience is some of those technology projects like ITS improvements, signalizations, and things like that. Those kind of projects usually come to the top. This time also, it's not different. They are the top 3 projects are all the technology. Primary mode is technology. They're trying to implement transit signal priority, or intersection signal improvements that will or technologies that will enable vehicles to move faster. Though it says smart and connected vehicle infrastructure, right now it will be a step up. Over time, they will step up to a level where it will be ready for connected vehicle feature whenever that comes through. The third one in Prince William County is again signal improvements so that the entire corridor's operations can be improved. That's usually the top projects in this time. It's the same. Then you usually see some of the larger projects where a lot of benefits is there. The cost is also high, but the benefits are also high. So it comes somewhere in the middle. Usually the larger projects, like in this case, you can see Seven Corners Ring Road project, Route 28 project, and the VRE project, Alexandria's Metroway. These sort of projects comes next in this list. Usually where we see the lowest ranked projects in those are the kind of projects where either is a very huge project with a huge cost. So their benefit compared to some of these, the high cost is not that big, or these are maybe small projects, but their benefits are really, really small. Again, when you look at benefits, remember we are looking at congestion reduction. So you have to keep that in mind. So some of the smaller bike pedestrian projects might be at the bottom. Some projects that are road widening projects, but very costly, they might be at the bottom. Next slide, please. Hold on, Sharon. I mean, pause there if anyone has any questions so far.
Okay. Does anyone want to ask any questions at this point? Okay, and I don't see anything.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, let's continue.
Next slide. Yeah. So there's a second measure we talked about, transaction rating. You can see the 10 performance measures in the color-coded columns title at the top. The PhD or the person hours of delay reduction in auto, transit, congestion duration reduction, growth in dedicated right of way, or person miles traveled in dedicated right of way. This is where you have a dedicated lane for BRT and things like that will get benefits. And growth in access to the equity population, bike pedestrian environment, safety, emission reduction. The last one is you can also see the weights. Last one is surge in person hours of travel, only 5%. That is also which we informally call as the Homeland Security measure. What if there is a sudden surge of need for people to travel from and the demand increases all of a sudden? How well can system take that surge with this new project in place? That with and without this project in place, that last measure. You can see again as different set of ranking. You will see here different set of ranking in the sense not the same projects that you saw at the top in the previous slide are showing up here at the top. Usually again you are looking at all these 10 different measures. So the larger the project, the larger level of impact it has. The more complex projects, they may have impact in multiple areas. Not all projects will have impact in all of these measures, but some large projects may have in multiple measures, and that adds up. So here you can see Seven Corners Ring Road is at the top. South Van Dorn Street bridge enhancements second in Alexandria. Route 234 and Sudley Manor Drive interchange, and so on. That's, as I said, the complexity of the projects will impact how these ranks come up. Next slide, please. Long-term benefit. This is a visualization of how we look at long-term benefit. Again, I mentioned earlier that transportation benefit is compared to the revenue share you brought in. The transportation benefit, we look at two different ways. One, where that is happening. If the congestion reduction is happening in Arlington, that benefit goes to Arlington. That's one way to look at geographic look, or what we call performance-based here. The other way to look at is who is actually benefiting. So we look at the trips, where they are starting from, where they are originating, and the benefit each of that traveler is experiencing, irrespective of which jurisdiction that congestion reduction is happening. We assign all those benefits to the origin of that that jurisdiction where the trip originated. So that's what we call trip-based. So we look at two different ways. There is no one way to look at it. So we said we will look at two different ways and see what range we get. So that's what this blue triangle and yellow diamond shows. The red square, that's a revenue share. That's very easy to calculate. We know exact dollar amount up to the cents, how much money we received in revenues. So that share of that share of revenue or the benefits, that's what is shown here for each of the jurisdictions. Remember that this is only for the 9 member localities, 4 counties and 5 cities. If you are a town, you received a project that is already included into your county. So here, this is actually for the previous cycle, results from the previous cycle. I will request you to focus on Arlington for the time being. You can see that the revenue share is about 10%, but the benefits, both versions of the benefits are at about 5%, which means by the investments made till 2025 or the fiscal year 2025, Arlington is getting less benefit. The share of benefits they receive is less than the share of revenue. We call that as the jurisdiction is underperforming. It's not getting approximately equal benefit as the revenue. It's not that bad, but similar. You will see Alexandria, there is still a gap between the two in the same manner. Now, if you look at Prince William, you will see the opposite. You see the more benefit than the revenue. We call that overperforming. So Prince William is overperforming, Arlington and Alexandria underperforming. All the other jurisdictions you can see are pretty close. So we consider them as approximately equal. Our aim over the long time, in the long term, is to not have that gap, to keep them pretty close to each other, approximately equal. The key here is we cannot make that gap go away in one cycle. It may take several cycles and several other factors playing into to make that gap closed in. So this is from the previous cycle. Just wanted
Sri, I'm sorry if I could cut in for 1 minute on this. Regarding long-term benefits, it doesn't mean because we do our funding programs biannually, it does not mean that every funding program, each locality is going to be even. That is not the intent of the law. And even now, the way we as staff calculate long-term benefits, it goes above and beyond the principles that the authority adopted. So I don't want anyone to be alarmed if they think, oh, I'm underperforming and I have to be made whole every funding program. That is not the case. On some funding programs, you may be up, some you may be down, others you may be on par. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Monica. That's right. So thank you for inserting it at the right place, because now when I jump to the next slide, you can see that things haven't changed a lot. Arun, next slide, please. You can see that Arlington and Alexandria still have that gap, underperforming gap, and Prince William still has the overperforming gap. It doesn't mean that we haven't Again, as Monica said, one cycle, we cannot change everything, and that doesn't become a deciding factor. There are the other quantitative measures that we need to give priority to. So it may take several cycles to build or bridge that gap. Next slide, please. So this is obviously you cannot read it. This is where we bring all those quantitative and qualitative measures, the results into one place so people can see it in when I take a printout or read it on your screen. This is obviously a presentation, so you cannot see it. Those quantitative measures, the three measures that I measured, they are all represented towards the right end of this table. All the color-coded cells there, except the last color-coded column. These are the qualitative measures. The last color-coded column there is the long-term benefit. In order to present that, if I can go to the next slide. Yeah, so here I try to remove all those columns with the basic information about project cost and all, so it may be a little bit readable when you look at it. So you can see again, I listed all the projects by the CRRC rank. That's the rightmost column. That's what we had to give priority to. By law, we had to give priority to CRRC. So we list the projects in that order here. Rightmost column is the rank. The one before that is the actual rating. The two columns next to that, those are the transaction project rating and the transaction rank. So you can write a transaction rating rank. There is one column that talks about notes. There are things that we cannot capture in any of these formats, quantitative or qualitative, then we capture that in notes. And then the first color-coded column from the right, that is a long-term benefit. I want to spend a minute on that. You will see three colors there, yellow, green, and brown. Yellow means that jurisdiction. This is, if you look at the cell, it's by each project, but the color coding is based on jurisdiction. As you saw, 9 jurisdictions are given. An analysis shows that either they are approximately equal, they are underperforming or overperforming. Yellow color code means approximately equal. Green means underperforming, so that would be the Arlington and Alexandria projects. And the brown means overperforming, that will be the Prince William projects. Now I'll start from the left end of those color-coded columns. I mentioned several factors already, which are there gaps for funding gap for any of the phases that's identified in the first column. Local priority, when you submit the applications, your board directs your staff to give priority to your projects, which project has a top priority, second, third. So based on that, we give some color coding here. How much money are you bringing? How much committed funds are you bringing from other sources? That's the third column there. Fourth and fifth columns, that's what I call past performance earlier. If one of these applications had NVTA funding in the past and that was supposed to spend money by now, then our system, the reimbursement system will show that how much money was expected to be spent by now, and that as per your own cash flow schedules, and how much have you actually spent by now. So that comparison is what is shown. Obviously, only one project, Frontier Drive project, is the only project that is in that spending category out of 5 continuation projects. That is what is marked with the color there. Everyone else in that column is marked by gray. The next column, that's where we are looking at it by jurisdiction. At the jurisdiction level, you had several projects approved by the authority so far. How well have you been spending those money? How timely you were spending those money? Again, green means you're spending the right time, on time. Yellow means, okay, you are doing somewhere close, but not close enough. Brown means you are not, you are lagging, you are delayed in expending that money. The next two columns talk about policy 29. Excuse me. The policy 29 is a policy adopted by the authority and amended a couple of times. This is to make sure that the projects move, that they initiate and they execute the agreement with NVTA, initiate progress at project on time. One of them is to see once authority appropriates funds for a project, within 3 authority meetings, the jurisdiction is expected to execute an agreement with NVTA. So we have looked so far how many projects were there in that situation, how many of them by jurisdiction, at the jurisdiction level, how many times you met that policy 29 measure. So that's what one of the columns. The other column shows this another key policy factor that talks about once you have that agreement in place, you have to show substantive progress within the next 18 months. So not just have the money on time, take the money on time and start spending, but then we need to see progress of that too. So those are the two different policy 29 measures we are looking here. The next one is, it's not a policy 29 measure per se, but we have seen that many projects spend some money, so they meet all those the first two measures, but then it sits there for a long time without moving, without spending any money. So we have identified projects that that didn't submit any invoice in the past 12 plus months, more than 12 months. So for 1 year, the project is not moving, or it's moving, but jurisdictions are not submitting invoices to us. So that's another factor we looked at. Then the next two columns we looked at is how fast the project will start and how fast it will complete, so that we calculated all these great benefits. But if the project doesn't start for next 10 years, then the region is not going to see those benefits for 10 years. If the project completes in the next 3 years, great, we will see those benefits starting in 3 years. So we are trying to see that project readiness and how fast we can start seeing the benefits. The next 3 columns, those are the alignment with core values, equity, safety, and sustainability. Again, green means there is good alignment. Yellow means reasonable, but not at a high level. Brown means no alignment in this case, or very low alignment. In this case, most of them are in, or all of them are in either green or yellow, which means all projects have reasonably good alignment with equity, safety, and sustainability. Again, just to summarize, the project is listed by the condition reduction related to cost rank, because by law, that's the starting point. We had to give priority to that rank. That's all the analytical results we have. Harun, can you go to the next slide, please? I mentioned that we are starting the public comment period tomorrow. We will have all these information, all these tables and charts that we showed. They will all be uploaded onto our website. In addition, we will have what this slide shows, a project description form, a 2-page summary of all the applications. It will show the project title, jurisdiction submitted by which jurisdiction submitted this application, the brief project description, a location map, milestone when each phase will start and end, project funding details, and some of those analytical results, and the primary and secondary modes. So this will be a summary page where anyone who wants to know more about the projects can understand the details here. So we will have for each of these 24 projects a two-pager that will be uploaded onto our website. Next slide, please. Again, want to bring you back to that point where we're starting the public comment period tomorrow. In this February and March, we have been reviewing this process and the results with the committees. At the March authority meeting, authority approved a public hearing date, and they released the candidate project list and these evaluations for public comment. We are starting that comment tomorrow. It will run through May 19. At the May authority meeting on May 9th, we will have a public hearing. Then, once the public comment ends on May 19th, as I mentioned earlier, we will put together the results of that public comment, public opinions, how much support or opposition is there for each of these projects, and what kind of comments they have. We will bring it all back to you at your June meeting. At the same meeting, we will present the staff funding recommendations too. We will be doing it with the other committee, TAC and PCAC, both of you at the June meeting. You have the option to either endorse the staff recommendation as it is, or make modifications based on your preferences and present it to the it will then go to the PPC, the Planning and Programming Committee, which is a 5-member committee of the authority. They will look at staff recommendation, TAC recommendation, PCAC recommendation, and build their own recommendation that will then go to the authority. The authority will see all these recommendations, but they will take it up at their July meeting, and we are expecting that the authority will adopt this program at their July meeting on July 11th. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions? You can just speak up if you'd like, or you can raise your hand in the where it says more. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Shri. Thank you for the presentation, and being new to this. Apologize. This is a question that I'm sure has been covered in previous meetings, but can you just talk me through the process and the interaction between you and the NVTA staff and the jurisdictional staff on developing the different rankings or evaluation or scoring for the criteria, I guess, both the quantitative and qualitative criteria? How does that process work?
Sure. So when the jurisdiction submit the applications, after the deadline, we pick up all the applications we received. Staff will have an internal review to make sure the applications are complete and it meets all the eligibility requirements. Once we go through that filter process, whatever comes out of it, if there is an issue with any of the project that we have questions about eligibility, we right away get back to the jurisdiction, make sure we understand it correctly and we are not misrepresenting or misunderstanding anything. We go back and forth to make sure that if we decide it is ineligible, first we will run it with the jurisdiction staff to ensure that the way we understand the application is accurate and the definitions of eligibility are applied correctly here. So once we have that eligible application list complete, then we meet each individual applicant separately for depending on how many applications each one have. It may run from half an hour to 2 hours or more. So we go through each. The applicant will have an opportunity to present in a way you can call it selling their project, why their project is the best project to be funded. So they will have that opportunity. Since we have all reviewed the applications, we may have several questions, and it's not about a got you a moment. We want to understand the project really well so we can model, analyze them accurately. So we have that back and forth opportunity for every applicant to explain their. Obviously, you can write certain things in the application, but then there are more to it that we want to hear. We want to hear that story. So we give that opportunity. And then we take all that information, and analysis is done by NVTA staff. Some of the analysis is done by NVTA staff. Some of them are done by independent consultants. That process happens behind the scene. It's not, the jurisdiction staff is not directly involved in that. Once we have the results done, we come back to the jurisdiction, present all the results to the candidates again. What kind of results are there for all these 10 performance measures and so on. So again, there is another opportunity for the jurisdiction staff to give us any feedback to make sure that they may have a question, okay, why didn't they get high score on safety? We were expecting higher score on that. So we can go back and forth, explain and what happened. And if we missed anything, we can take that's the feedback we wanted. We take that feedback back and make sure we didn't miss anything. We are not making any obvious mistakes, things like that. So that is another opportunity for the jurisdictional staff to understand the analysis, review it, and comment it. That's once we receive all that feedback, incorporate that, that's when we call that, okay, now this is ready for public to take a look. That's a place where we are now.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome.
Okay, thank you for your question. Anyone else have any questions? All right, I think we can move on. Sri, are you finished?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for all that information. The last item is NVTA's update.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I'd like to add for this evening that we have moved, the authority has moved. So our new address is 2600 Park Tower Drive. Our current space is temporary. Right now, we're on the second floor, which is temporary while they continue to build out our permanent space on the 6th floor. In the interim, however, the authority will meet and have the public hearings, our April meeting and so forth in the 1st floor conference room of 2600 Park Tower Drive. So we happy to announce that we have completed our move. Regarding the 6-year program update and the public hearing, as Sri noted, the public hearing will be immediately prior to the May authority meeting. The official public comment period opens tomorrow. So we will encourage everyone to get the comments in. We will actually send something, a toolkit, if you will, to the committee. So if you would like to share with your constituents about providing public comment on the 24 projects. And Madam Chair, that is all I have this evening. You are on mute, Madam Chair.
Still doing that. Sorry, everybody. Does anyone else have anything else to add? Any comments or announcements or anything? Okay. All right. We're signing off early tonight. Okay. Our next meeting is April 24th at 6:30. Will that be virtual or in person?
I would invite Keith to make some comments on upcoming meetings.
Oh, okay, great.
Hi, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Haroon caught me out there, but the way the law effectively works for us is that we can have a certain number of virtual meetings per year. I think in the case of this committee, it will be probably 2 or 3 if we meet through the full year, but we cannot have 2 consecutive meetings that are both virtual. So whenever the next meeting is, April is what's scheduled. Madam Chair, I would leave it to you and we can perhaps discuss this offline later. It's unlikely we will have any additional new business to bring to the committee in April because at the moment our sole focus is on the 6-year program. However, if there are questions from committee members and we need to go over any information we've provided, Shree's provided this evening in more detail, then we're more than happy to come back and do that. But if there aren't no more questions, then it may be that the committee could take a pause in April and come back in May. But certainly for that June meeting, where we'll be looking for the committee to make its recommendation to the authority, that we would like to do in person anyway. So not really looking at that as an opportunity to do virtual. But as to how many times we meet between now and then, I think we can discuss that subsequently and get your view as to whether you want to meet again. But we won't have any action items for you other than regular approval of meeting summaries until the June meeting, is my understanding at the moment.
Okay. Well, it might make sense to, if there's no information for us in April, and you think it's okay that we don't meet, it might be okay to ask if there's any opposition to not meeting. I know everybody, this group is a busy group, so I know that having a night to plan ahead for something else might be okay. Would that be all right if we just decided tonight to not meet?
Madam Chair, I think it's an excellent decision.
Okay. All right, everybody. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll see each other around at other events, but looks like we're going to be meeting in May then, unless we hear otherwise, and in person.
Yes, definitely in person. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Excellent. All right. Everyone have a wonderful evening then. All right. Meeting adjourned. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.